Some stories don't just frighten us, they unravel the very fabric of reality. Tonight, we're diving into 5 terrifying stories of cosmic horror. From vanishing towns to cursed libraries, from endless nights to haunted crimes, and finally, to something far older than humanity itself. Turn down the lights and don't look away, because once you glimpse the abyss, it never lets you go. There are ghost towns all across America. Some stand in the desert sun, their buildings slumped but still recognizable, where tourists wander and take photographs. Some are only foundations buried in weeds, forgotten by everyone, but a few historians with more patience than sense. And some don't exist at all anymore, erased by fire, flood, or the steady march of time. But Coldbrook was different, because Coldbrook did not fade. It vanished. Twice. Coldbrook was a farming town in the low valleys of the Midwest, built along a shallow river that wound between forests and fields. A silo rose above the horizon, marking the land for miles. There was a row of stores along Main Street, 2 churches with rival congregations, and a schoolhouse where children scraped chalk into boards while their fathers worked the land. It was no more or less remarkable than any other small town of the era. And then, in 1913, it was gone. Not in the way most towns are gone, with burnt beams and blackened chimneys. Not in the way of floods, where ruins lie under silt and water. Coldbrook was gone as though it had been brushed away by a hand. Travelers reached the road one morning to find nothing but fields and trees. The grain silo, the school, the houses, the people, gone. Where a main street had been was only grass, grown as if undisturbed for centuries. Where fences had divided property, it was nothing but smooth soil. It was not destruction, it was erasure. Families arrived from neighboring counties searching for kin. They found no graves, no photographs, no belongings. It was as though the people of Coldbrook had never existed. And yet, records remained, birth certificates stamped with the town name, bills of sale, a census written by careful hands only months before. The government dispatched surveyors. Newspapers sent men with notebooks. They all found the same: nothing. A headline from the Columbus Sentinel, dated September 1913, read, "Whole town missing, Coldbrook erased." The story gripped readers for weeks, then faded. There was no explanation, no recovery, no survivors. The earth was smooth, and the world moved on. For 4 decades, Coldbrook was nothing but a rumor. A campfire tale traded in whispers. Some said it had sunk. Others said it had burned without ash. Others still claimed the land had swallowed it for sins too grave to name. But in 1954, motorists on a nearby highway began to report lights. They swore they saw houses glowing across the fields at dusk, a grid of yellow dots like windows. A church steeple outlined against the moon. And when they slowed, they heard the sound of bells carried faintly on the wind. By winter, Coldbrook was back, not as ruins, not rebuilt, but standing whole, exactly as it had been. The silo, the schoolhouse, the churches. Families walked the streets. Shops sold flour and nails. Children played in the snow. Surveyors returned in disbelief. They spoke to residents who insisted nothing unusual had happened. Coldbrook's always been here, they said. They had records, photographs, keepsakes. They laughed at the notion that their town had been gone for 40 years. But there were cracks. Maps did not agree. Surveyors charted the streets, but compasses spun, bearings shifted, distances contradicted themselves. Clocks ticked unevenly. Shadows stretched in strange directions. Photographs blurred, some showing buildings at angles impossible for their frames. Visitors felt unease they could not name. They described silence behind walls when laughter sounded, curtains fluttering without wind, faces in windows repeating the same smile over and over. Some swore the residents' eyes caught the light too sharply, reflecting like mirrors. One newspaper editor, after visiting, wrote in a private note never published. They were kind. Too kind, like actors remembering their lines. I don't think they know what they are. Then, in 1957, Coldbrook vanished again. Drivers turned down the same road to find empty fields. The town was gone. Houses, families, streets all erased once more. The land was smooth and quiet. The state filed no explanation. The newspapers barely covered it. It was as though Coldbrook had been forgotten on purpose. After the second vanishing, people began to speak of other places that felt wrong. Small towns glimpsed at the edges of roads, towns not marked on maps, towns that seemed too still, too quiet. Travelers stopped for gas or bread, only to find later that no such place existed. Some never returned at all. Researchers who studied Coldbrook found their notes changing. Journals filled with words they did not remember writing, diagrams of spirals and angles that bent across the page. Soil samples taken from the site corroded overnight, metals twisting into patterns like veins, bones etched with grooves that resembled streets. Folklore enthusiasts gathered clippings, compiling the fragments. One whispered warning appeared again and again. Don't stay the night. Those who lingered in Coldbrook's echo did not leave whole. Some returned changed, eyes reflecting no light, voices stuttering into loops. Some grew silent and still, as though waiting for something unseen. Others were never seen again, though their cars remained parked by the roadside, engines cooling. You see, Coldbrook was never a town. It was a mask, a shape worn by something vast, pressing against the skin of reality. It was a hunger that borrowed streets and steeples the way a predator borrows shadows. It lured with familiarity, grain silos, white fences, the warmth of neighbors' smiles. But beneath, it was something else entirely. Visitors who looked too closely saw the truth. Houses with too many doors, rooms without furniture, streets that bent inward, spiraling down into soil that pulsed faintly underfoot, basements with no end. The people were not people. They were echoes, shadows dressed in skin, repeating the same gestures, the same words. And when visitors believed, when they walked the streets and slept under the roofs, they were taken, folded into the mask, made part of the illusion. That was why Coldbrook returned stronger each time, because every believer, every witness, every victim gave it weight. Coldbrook has not officially returned since 1957, but stories say otherwise. Hikers speak of walking into valleys where no trails should lead and finding streets beneath their feet. Truckers whisper of towns where the lights glow too steady, where gas pumps work, though no wires run, where clerks stare too long. Campers tell of church bells heard in forests, miles from any road. Some photographs circulate on fringe forums, grainy images of Coldbrook's silo, its churches, its neat row of houses. These pictures always taken from a distance, always blurred, always disbelieved. But those who see them too long find the shapes repeating in their dreams. They dream of streets bending inward, of skies collapsing into funnels of black. They dream of being welcomed home to a town that should not exist. Coldbrook is not gone. It waits. It waits to be believed again, to be walked again, to be fed again. Each time stronger, each time more convincing, each time hungrier. And it does not need to wear the same name. When it comes again, it may be called something else. Fairvale, Mill Haven, Hollow's End. A town not marked on any map, waiting just off the road you always drive. You may stop for gas, buy bread at a corner store, nod at neighbors who greet you warmly. You may think it's ordinary, but if you sleep there, if you breathe its air, if you look too long into the windows at night, you will not leave. Because Coldbrook is not a town. It is hunger shaped like streets. And hunger always returns. If entire towns can vanish without explanation, what else might reality be hiding? Perhaps the answer lies in knowledge itself. Knowledge not meant for us. Our next story takes us into the Library of Midnight. There are places you stumble into once and never leave the same. Crossroads, graveyards, abandoned towns, roads that lead nowhere. But there are places older than roads, older than towns, places that wait patiently for the living to wander into them. The Library of Midnight is one of those places. It does not appear on any map. It cannot be reached by car or train, or even by intention. It appears only when the conditions are right, when midnight falls without stars, when you take a wrong turn on a road that should not exist, when you walk too far in your dreams. Some say it rises where great libraries once burned, fed by the ash of lost books. Some say it is the echo of every story never told. And some say it has always been here, waiting, older than words themselves. The building looks different to every eye. To some it is a cathedral of stone, to others a university's forgotten wing, to others a mansion with too many windows. But always the same signs reveal it. Black doors without handles, lamps that burn with cold flame, and the faint smell of dust and rot carried on still air. Step inside, and you are no longer in the world you left. The Library of Midnight is endless. Corridors stretch into darkness, lined with shelves that bend and tilt as though sagging under centuries of weight. The books are countless, their spines cracked, their bindings warped. Dust lies thick, yet the air carries the scent of iron, copper, something too sharp to be paper. The silence is complete. No scuttling mice, no fluttering moths. Only the faint creak of wood, like the sigh of something breathing. It does not take long to notice the truth. The books are not bound in cloth or leather. They are bound in skin. Some are pale and smooth, others dark and scarred. Some bear tattoos, moles, freckles. A few have faces, eyes stitched shut, mouths frozen in eternal screams. The pages within are written in ink that seeps when touched, leaving fingers stained red-brown. Some pages twitch as though alive. Some whisper, words slithering between the lines and voices you almost recognize. And then you find your name. Everyone who enters does. Sometimes quickly, sometimes after hours of searching, sometimes not until despair sets in. But always inevitably, there is a book with your name on its spine. Thick or thin, pristine or ruined. It is always there waiting. The first pages hold your past. Childhood, youth, the steps that brought you here. Written in detail you never shared, with thoughts you never voiced. Flip further, and you find the present, the words forming as you read them. Each breath you take recorded in black script. Go further still, and you find futures. Not one, but many. Some are simple. Tomorrow's breakfast, next year's love. Some are unbearable. Disease, betrayal, death. Some are impossible. Lives and places you never lived, times you never touched, faces you never wore. All written as if already true. But beware, because once you read a future, it becomes heavier in your bones. Some say reading it makes it real. Others say it was always real, and the reading only reveals the thread. Either way, it is inescapable. The Library of Midnight does not let you leave easily. The doors vanish behind you. The corridors shift when you turn. Hours pass, then days, though your stomach never growls and your throat never dries. Time is not kept here. Time is kept elsewhere, on shelves stacked higher than you can see. You may hear others in the distance, footsteps echoing, whispers carrying. Some voices call for help, some mutter nonsense, some recite passages until their throats tear. If you follow them, you rarely find their source. Sometimes you find only books lying open, pages wet, ink still fresh. Some say the librarians walk here too. Tall figures glimpsed between shelves, faces obscured, hands stained black. They move silently, placing new books on the shelves, removing others, never acknowledging the living. They say if you meet their gaze, you are cataloged immediately. Your name inked into your book's last page, your body hollowed and stretched into a new binding. And sometimes, you see the truth of the shelves themselves. They are not wood. Look too closely, and you notice pores, veins, hair. The shelves are made of what they hold. The library feeds. It does not simply record, it absorbs. Every word is a life, every binding a body, every whisper a thought, pulled from a skull and pressed flat. The library grows with each visitor, each victim, each reader. It will never stop, because there are always more stories, always more futures, always more flesh. There are those who claim to have escaped. Their tales are inconsistent, fragmentary. Some say they fled by refusing to read their own book, wandering until a door reappeared. Some claim they tore their page out and followed the bleeding path it left. Some say they woke in their beds, drenched in sweat, the taste of ink in their mouths. But most do not escape at all. They become part of the collection. If you walk the shelves long enough, you may find familiar names. Not just yours, but those of family, friends, strangers you once glimpsed. Some bindings are fresh, still warm. Some are centuries old, brittle, cracking. The library has always been here. It always will be. And if you are quiet enough, you can hear it turning pages. Not with hands, but with hunger. They say the library appears only at midnight, because that is when the veil is thinnest. When the world itself forgets what hour it is, when time can slip sideways into places not meant for men. And in those moments, the library yawns open, hungry for more stories, more bindings, more lives to flatten into pages. But the worst secret is this: it does not only appear when you stumble into it. Sometimes it comes to you. There are reports of people finding small shelves in their basements, corridors in their attics that should not exist. A single lamp burning in a closet, illuminating books that were not there before. Some find only a few volumes, then more, until their homes are devoured, walls stretching into stacks that never end. And once the library has a foothold, there is no leaving. Because the library does not forget. It remembers everything. Some horrors aren't bound to a place, but to time itself. Imagine a night that resets again and again, trapping you in a cycle with no escape. This is the night that wouldn't end. There are nights that pass like smoke, fading without memory. And then there are nights that cling, nights that leave their weight pressed into your bones, nights you can't shake even years later. But the worst are the nights that do not end, the ones that trap you, repeating themselves until you are no longer certain if the world beyond them exists at all. The night that wouldn't end is one such story. It begins, as all stories like this do, with a place. A lonely stretch of road cutting through the pines, blacktop cracked and uneven, barely used even in the best of times. The old highway. It once connected towns, but the interstate made it irrelevant, a forgotten relic winding through hills and valleys where no one goes anymore. It should have been left to rot, reclaimed by weeds and silence. But sometimes, when the night is right and the moon low, travelers find themselves on it without meaning to. One wrong turn, one missed exit, and they are there, headlights carving through endless dark. The old highway has no mile markers, no signs, no proof that it exists at all. Yet those who find it always describe the same thing: the way the trees close in overhead, branches knitting so tightly that the stars vanish. The way the asphalt seems to stretch longer than it should, each curve leading only to another. And the way time itself begins to unravel, though they never realize it until it's too late. It starts subtly. A radio station repeating the same song, word for word, as though the DJ has forgotten to change the record. A clock on the dashboard that never moves past midnight, no matter how long you drive. The same deer crossing the road in the same way, hooves striking pavement with identical rhythm. At first, You tell yourself it's coincidence, fatigue, imagination. But as the miles drag on, the pattern becomes undeniable. You are not moving forward. You are circling, spiraling, caught in a loop. Witnesses who escaped, if they can be called lucky, say, the first loop feels almost normal. The second feels strange. By the third, the changes begin. Headlights flicker against shapes in the trees that were not there before. The asphalt glistens wet, though the sky is clear. Shadows stretch across the road, too long, too thin, as though cast by figures you cannot see. And always, the clock reads midnight. It is said the loop tightens the longer you remain. The first cycle lasts an hour, the second half that, the third shorter still. Time collapses inward, folding you closer and closer to the core of whatever holds you. By the seventh loop, minutes stretch like days, and every sound carries the weight of eternity. No one agrees on what waits at the center. Some claim it is the memory of a tragedy, replaying itself until the land itself cannot let go. A bus that crashed one stormy night, killing all aboard. A family stranded on the roadside, never seen again. Others believe it is not memory, but hunger that something lives within the loop, feeding on those who stumble into it, using repetition to soften them before the final strike. The stories of survivors, rare as they are, carry similarities. They speak of figures glimpsed in the rearview mirror, walking along the shoulder of the road, closer with each loop. Their faces are never clear, blurred as though by fogged glass. Some shuffle as though broken, others stride with purpose. But they are always there, just behind, never falling behind no matter how fast you drive. Worse still are those who appear ahead. Shapes standing in the headlights, arms hanging limply, heads cocked as though listening. The first time, you swerve to miss them. The second, they move closer to the center line. By the third, they no longer move at all, and your tires pass through them with no resistance, as if they are smoke. Yet when you check the mirror, they are still there, standing, watching, waiting. The haunting is not limited to the road itself. Some describe hearing voices in the car, murmurs rising from the back seat, though they are alone. Others feel hands pressing against the glass from the outside, leaving streaks that fade before their eyes. One man swore the rear view showed not the road behind him, but a tunnel of endless darkness, something vast and writhing moving within it. And through it all, the loops continue. Midnight, always midnight, as though the night itself has forgotten how to pass. Those who vanish completely, because many do, are said to become part of it. Drivers on rare nights swear they see other cars ahead, taillights glowing dimly, moving at the same pace. But no matter how fast they go, they never catch up. Sometimes the taillights vanish suddenly, swallowed by the dark, as though snuffed out. Sometimes they pull to the shoulder, and if you pass, you see the driver slumped over the wheel, face pale, eyes wide, mouth frozen in a silent scream. Then, the next loop, the car is gone. The few who escaped never explain how. Some say they turned off their headlights and drove blind until the road spat them out. Others claim they forced themselves to stop, to wait on the shoulder, no matter what they saw moving around them, until the loop broke. But most simply say they do not remember. One moment, they were caught in the endless midnight. The next, they were on a different road, dawn breaking, the old highway nowhere to be found. The curse of the night that wouldn't end is not only in its loops, but in what follows after. Survivors are never truly free. They wake to clocks frozen at midnight, hear tires crunching gravel outside their homes when no car is there. They find themselves driving familiar routes, only to realize they have no memory of how they arrived. Some return to the loop without meaning to, drawn back like metal to a magnet, until one day they do not return at all. There is a pattern to those it chooses. Lonely travelers, those driving long hours on empty highways. People running from something: grief, guilt, loss. The loop does not catch the content, the satisfied. It feeds on the restless, the weary, those already circling their own darkness. Perhaps that is why it holds so tightly, because those it takes were already trapped long before they saw the first curve of the old highway. And what of the figures on the roadside? The ones who watch, the ones who walk? Some say they are echoes of past victims, hollowed out by endless repetition, now part of the trap itself. Others believe they are something older, lures set by whatever waits at the heart of the loop. Perhaps both are true. Perhaps the longer you walk the endless night, the less of yourself remains, until you are only a shadow, waiting for the next traveler to join you. The night that wouldn't end is not a place you can find on purpose. It is not marked on any map, nor charted by compass. It finds you. One wrong turn, one missed exit, one moment of distraction, and suddenly you are there, headlights cutting through a tunnel of black trees, clock frozen at midnight. By the time you realize, it is too late. The loop has already closed around you. And when it does, you will drive and drive and drive, watching the same deer cross the same road, hearing the same song on the same broken radio, feeling the same eyes on you from the trees. You will try to escape, but the road will only fold back on itself, leading you deeper into its hunger. Until you, too, are only a shadow on the roadside, and someone else will come one night when the moon is low and the world has forgotten them, and they will see you in their headlights, and the night will never end. Not all nightmares are purely supernatural. Some are born from crime, from violence, from the human darkness we try not to see. But sometimes, even those stories bleed into the paranormal. Let's enter the house where they vanished. There are houses that never truly empty. You can board them shut, strip the wallpaper, smash the windows, but something clings to their walls, something that refuses to leave. The house where they vanished is one of those places. It begins, like many stories that straddle the line between crime and curse, with disappearances. The records go back nearly a century. In 1928, a traveling salesman named Daniel Meeks was last seen leaving town with samples in his case, heading west along the county road. His car was found a week later, parked crookily at the edge of a property just outside the town line. The driver's door hung open, keys still in the ignition. The man himself was never found. In 1947, two teenagers slipped away from a harvest dance, telling friends they were going someplace private. Their shoes were discovered in the same ditch, beside the same sagging fence. Decades later, their bodies never surfaced. In 1962, a mail carrier failed to complete his route. His satchel was discovered split open in the dirt, letters scattered, many soaked by the rain. They lay at the base of the same property. Each case had different investigators, different circumstances, but the same landmark, the old house on Grindle Road. A farmhouse, 2 stories. White paint long since flaked away, porch collapsed in on itself, windows dark and gaping like sockets. It was abandoned even in the 1920s, condemned as unsafe. Yet over the years, vehicles, shoes, bags, coats, and even bloodstains all pointed back to it. The sheriff's department treated the cases as crimes, because what else could they do? Missing persons, possible homicides, open investigations. But the files tell a stranger story. No bodies were ever recovered. No signs of struggle ever found within the house itself. Dogs brought to the site refused to cross the threshold, bristling and whining until dragged away. Theories circulated. A drifter, a killer who used the house as cover, a cult hiding in the rafters. None stuck, because there was never evidence of another person. Only the house, watching from the hill. And as the decades stretched on, the vanishings never stopped. College students dared each other to enter in the 70s. A few returned pale and shaken, speaking of staircases that seemed longer on the way down than up, of hallways ending in angles no carpenter had built. Others never returned at all. Their friends whispered but told no police, afraid of blame, until the missing posters went up anyway. In the 80s, an out-of-town trucker broke down nearby. His rig was later found stripped of cargo, trailer door flung wide. His logbook ended mid-sentence, the last line scratched as though the pen had been yanked from his hand. The final word, house. By the 90s, the property was infamous. Urban legends called it a murder den, a hideout, a black hole in the earth. Paranormal investigators set up cameras, equipment, reels of tape. None stayed the night. Their recordings showed only static, their clocks resetting to midnight, their batteries drained as if by thirst. One group left in a panic, abandoning thousands of dollars of gear. When they returned with police the next day, the house was empty, the equipment gone, as though it had sunk into the floor. The most chilling evidence comes from the files themselves, yellowed pages stacked deep in county archives. Each disappearance noted with the same finality. Last known location, Grindle Roadhouse. Year after year, the names change, but the words do not. The longest gap is 5 years, the shortest, 3 weeks. The house does not sleep for long. Locals say the house is not haunted in the way others are. No woman in white floats through the windows. No chains rattle in the dark. It does not creak or groan or wail. It simply waits, patient as stone, drawing the unwary across its threshold. Some say the vanishings are sacrifices, though no one claims to know to what. Others believe the house itself is alive, its rooms digestive, its walls pulsing in hunger, swallowing those who enter whole. The strangest accounts come from the few who claim to have stepped inside and left again. Their words are fragmented, as though memory itself resists being put to page. They describe air too thick to breathe, dust that moves against the wind, staircases that end in walls, doors that open onto identical rooms again and again. Time moves wrong inside. Watches spin forward hours and minutes, while the moon outside never shifts. One man claimed he found his own footprints layered over themselves in the dust, circling endlessly, though he had only just arrived. Most chilling of all are the reports of hearing voices. Not ghostly wails or spectral moans, but ordinary voices, familiar voices, friends, family, the missing themselves, calling from upstairs, from the cellar, from just beyond the next door. Those who follow the voices are never seen again. By the 2000s, the property was fenced, boarded, declared a biohazard. The county tried to erase it, bulldozing the structure, filling the basement with concrete. But the house did not vanish. The ruins remained, jagged and skeletal, and still the disappearances continued. A surveyor, a trespassing photographer, a pair of hunters looking for shelter from the rain. Their trail ended at the ruins and nowhere else. Now the legend has grown teeth. Travelers passing through the county avoid the road entirely, detouring miles just to keep their wheels from touching its gravel. Locals cross themselves when speaking of it, as if the house can hear its own name. And the files still grow, each new missing person report echoing the old. What is the truth? Some cling to the belief that a killer still hides there, a bloodline of violence stretching across generations, taking advantage of the myth to mask their crimes. But the timelines don't match. The vanishings began before the sheriff, who first investigated, was even born. They continued after the house was supposedly destroyed. Too many years, too many bodies, too much silence. And so the whispers grow darker. That the house is not merely cursed, but a wound in the world, a doorway into something else. That each person who steps inside is not murdered but consumed, drawn into a place from which nothing escapes. That the reason no bodies are found is because they are no longer in our world at all. If you drive Grindle Road at night, you may see it still. The outline of the house rising from the hill, though no beams stand, no roof remains. Headlights catch its windows glowing faintly, as though something watches from within. The air grows colder. The radio turns to static. Your clock falters near midnight. If you stop, if you step out, if you follow the pull of that hill, you may walk into the house where they vanished. You may breathe the stale, thick air, hear the familiar voices calling from upstairs. You may find your footprints already in the dust, circling, as though you have been there before. And when you do, you will understand why no one returns. Because the house is hungry, because the house remembers, and because you were always meant to be among the vanished. And finally, there are things beneath our world, things older than language, older than the stars we see in the sky. Some truths are not meant to be uncovered. This is the black vortex beneath the mire. There are places in the world where land resists maps, where boundaries blur, where compasses falter, where men who think they know the soil find themselves strangers beneath the same sky. These places are few, but they exist, and they are always avoided for long, because when the land itself feels wrong, men understand, without needing to speak, that it is not theirs to walk upon. The mire was one such place. It lay at the edge of old swamplands in the south, a stretch of stagnant water and peat, too deep for farming and too shifting for roads. For centuries, it was passed by, left to itself, a blot of silence on the landscape. Those who lived near its borders knew better than to trespass. Their fathers had warned them, and their fathers before them, though the warnings grew vague with time. It was simply said, the mire was not for men. And yet, stories clung to it. Hunters spoke of deer that vanished at its edge, of hounds that fled yelping into the dark, never to return. Fishermen whispered of black water that sucked nets and oars down with more force than any current should hold. Children dared one another to approach its reeds, only to swear they heard whispers arising with the mist. And sometimes after storms, strange objects surfaced in the shallows. Bones too large for any beast of the swamps. Stones carved with symbols no eye could recognize. Lengths of iron warped as though melted and cooled by no fire of this earth. At the heart of the mire was a sinkhole. A yawning mouth of water, perfectly circular, its surface so still it seemed made of glass. It was not marked on maps. Pilots flying overhead claimed it shifted position between flights. The hole was called many names, the black vortex, the drowned mouth, the still eye, but always with a shiver, always with the knowledge that naming it at all was dangerous. Those who lingered near it long enough felt time grow strange. Watches slowed or raced. Shadows bent in the wrong direction. Men grew old in days, or else found themselves unchanged after decades. There were stories of a farmer who entered as a young man and was found centuries later, bones fused with peat, eyes still wet in sockets. A soldier who stumbled into the mire during maneuvers and returned 3 days later, pale and silent, though he had been buried in another state 10 years prior. The vortex was not water, not truly. Those who gazed into it swore it did not reflect the sky, but another sky, starless and deep, vast and endless. They said it showed motion below, shapes too large, too slow, coiling and uncurling in silence. Some believed it was bottomless. Others swore it led not downward, but outward, into somewhere else entirely. The land around it twisted. Trees grew wrong near the vortex. Branches sprouting from branches, roots tangled into knots that pulsed faintly at night. Reeds stood stiff, even in high wind. Frogs croaked in rhythms that suggested language, though no man could decipher it. And sometimes, pale lights drifted across the water, not fireflies, not will-o'-wisps, but something older, hungrier. Those lights sank into the vortex like offerings, never to rise again. Animals that drank from its edges changed. Dogs returned with too many teeth. Birds shed feathers of glass instead of down. Once, a bull was led to the vortex and emerged days later in a neighboring field. Its flesh melted and reformed, 4 horns jutting from its skull, eyes glowing faintly as though lit from within. The farmer who owned it tried to slaughter the thing, but no blade cut it. Weeks later, both man and beast vanished together. There were human victims too. Some wandered too close and were never seen again. Others returned, but were not whole. They spoke in voices not their own, languages no one recognized. Their eyes reflected no light. Some rotted alive, their bodies refusing to die, flesh sloughing from bone, while hearts still beat. Some grew silent and stiff, until they were indistinguishable from the scarecrows their families propped in fields. And some simply stared, night after night, at the horizon, waiting for something only they could see. What lay beneath the mire was not sleeping. The black vortex was not a void, but an eye, and it watched. It watched across centuries, across ages, waiting for the right moment to open wider. The land itself was only its eyelid, the reeds its lashes, the swamps its tears. And when storms shook the earth, when thunder rolled, the eye trembled too, a ripple across its surface like the flicker of a waking glance. Some cults knew this. They came in secret, bearing offerings of blood and bone. They believed the vortex was a gateway, a mouth that fed on flesh but returned knowledge. They carved symbols into their skin, chanting beneath the stars, throwing their dead into the black. Sometimes the corpses returned, bloated and smiling, whispering secrets of places no human had ever walked. Sometimes they did not return at all. Either way, the cultists were satisfied. But the vortex did not serve them. It only used them. Because what lay beneath was older than gods, older than oceans, older than the earth itself. It was something vast, incomprehensible, something that shifted in dimensions no man could name. A coil, a root, a vein of the cosmos itself, pressed against our world until the thin places broke. The mire was one such place, where the skin of reality thinned enough for the thing beneath to bleed through. Those who felt its call could never escape. There are diaries found in cabins drowned by the swamp, written in shaking hands. They tell of nights without dawn, of moons that filled the sky too large, of stars that bent into spirals. They tell of hearing whispers in the reeds, whispers that grew louder when ink touched paper, until words were no longer their own, but dictated by something else. They tell of dreams where the dreamer fell forever, spinning, pulled into a spiral of black water that opened wider and wider until the whole universe drowned in it. And then the diaries stop, always mid-sentence, always as if the writer was taken mid-word. Even now, the vortex waits. Satellites have photographed it. Though images degrade, pixels smear into spirals, data corrupts into static. Scientists who study it lose weeks, months, years, unable to recall what they've written. Machines break near it. Compasses spin endlessly. Radios catch signals in languages that predate mankind. The vortex does not belong to this world. It is a hole in the skin of the universe, a wound that will not heal, and wounds fester. Wounds spread. Someday, it will not be contained. Someday, the eyelid will lift fully. And when it does, the eye beneath will not only see but open, and what stirs behind it will climb through. The land will sink, the sky will drown, and all that is alive will be pulled into that spiral, stripped of shape, remade into something that can endure what waits beyond stars. Until then, the vortex waits patient as stone, deep as eternity. And if you stand too close, if you stare too long into its surface, you may find it staring back. You may feel your reflection tilt, your shadow stretch, your heartbeat echo, not in your chest, but in the waters below. And you may realize too late that it has already chosen you, because once the vortex sees you, you are already falling, and no one climbs back from the black beneath the mire. You've just heard 5 terrifying stories of cosmic horror that remind us how fragile our grip on reality truly is. If you enjoyed tonight's descent into darkness, don't forget to like the video, share it with a friend, and subscribe for more horror every week. Until next time, remember, the unknown is always closer than you think.